Welcome to Unleashed, the podcast where we redefine leadership by focusing on what truly matters, the people driving change. Change leadership is about guiding people through transformation in a way that inspires them to embrace change because they believe in it. Whether you're a leader looking to foster a culture of growth or someone eager to break through barriers in life and business, this podcast is for you. Now our host, Wendy.
Welcome to Unleashed. I'm Wendy, and I'm your host. Today's guest is Mark Ryski, the founder and CEO of HeadCount and one of the most respected international voices in retail analytics. Mark is known for literally writing the book on store traffic and shopper conversion. He has spent decades helping brick and mortar retailers drive retail performance. From his early days as a curious marketing manager to boardroom strategist for major global brands, Mark's mission has stayed the same: use data to make retail smarter. His insights have been featured in leading business and retail publications, and he's a featured BrainTrust contributor on RetailWire.com. Mark was named a Rethink Retail top retail expert in 2025. So Mark, you are a returning guest. It is so good to have you back.
Wendy, it is such a pleasure to be back with you here today.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Well, let's just dig in. I find your journey fascinating. You started out when you wrote your first book, When Retail Customers Count. It was the first book ever written that was actually dedicated to the study of store traffic. So what motivated you to actually study and write about store traffic?
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Thanks for the question. I mean, like so many things in life, necessity is the mother of invention. And I worked in retail for a good part of my early career. And I was just trying to understand if our marketing was actually delivering the outcomes we were looking for. And there was nothing on traffic, store traffic analytics. And I scoured marketing textbooks and retailing books, and there was nothing said on this. And I just ultimately decided that if retailers are really going to think about store traffic differently and understand conversion rates, then there should be a book about this. And I just thought, why won't somebody's got to write it? It might as well be me. And that's what I did.
Well, and you were in marketing at the time, is that right?
Yeah. Well, so this goes back to how HeadCount and my passion for store traffic and conversion all started. I was the marketing manager, as you rightly pointed out, for an independent single location computer store back in the early 1990s. Okay. This is when you actually walked into a physical store and bought software off the shelf. Okay. It goes back to those days. Anyway, I was in charge of marketing, and I'll never forget this. We ran a major promotion, television, radio remotes, all kinds of newsprint, so on and so forth. And the store was busy. And it was a big store. We had 25 associates on the floor and busy, active store. And I watched as people streamed into the store, wandered around, and then left without buying.
Oh, so you're celebrating traffic, but nobody's buying.
Well, exactly. I mean, our associates were doing the best job they could. Buying a computer back in early, 1990s was complicated and expensive. So it was a high involvement purchase decision. And so the associates were tied up. We just had too much traffic. People would come, wander around the store, not get served, and leave without buying. So that was bad enough, but that really wasn't the trigger. The trigger was when my boss at the end of the day counted up the money in the till and said, sales were good, but not great. I guess that promotion didn't work that well. And that's what really got me, because I said the promotion did what it needed to do. It brought prospects into the store.
That's right.
But we didn't convert that traffic. And that's how it all started for me. I said, if I can track how many people are coming into the store, that's going to help me understand if the marketing was doing its job.
Yeah. So what did you do next, and how did that lead to you then starting HeadCount, 20 years ago?
Well, actually, the origin goes all the way back to the early 90s. I set out to, I just thought to myself, I need to buy a traffic counter. Well, I tried to find somebody that sold an electronic, some kind of traffic counting system. I found a company that actually did that. I went to my boss and I said, look, this device, this traffic counting thing is going to cost $2,500. But at that time, we were investing about $250,000 a year on marketing and advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is a small price to pay to enable us to understand if those marketing investments are paying off. And you know what he said to me? It still stings after all this time.
Clearly.
He said, $2,500 for that gizmo to count traffic? We're not going to do that. We could do another radio remote or more advertising with that money. And that was my first lesson in, penny wise, dollar foolish, I guess. But I was undeterred. And it was a computer store, and we had a number of university students that worked for us in various departments. And a couple of the students that I became friends with were engineering students, and they worked in our tech services department. And I just went to them and said, can you build me a basic traffic counter? Infrared beam at the door, dump the data into Excel, and I can analyze it from there. And they said, sure. So with about $300 in parts from Radio Shack that I paid for out of my pocket, HeadCount was born, and I was in the traffic counting business.
Wow. I love the story so much. And I love even more that now we fast forward and you have a new book coming out, and you've kind of gone full circle because the name of your new book is Store Traffic is a Gift. So what has inspired now this third book? Because I mean, I've lived my whole life going, I really want to write a book, and I still have not written my first one. And so I'm so inspired by you that you're now on your third book. So what inspired Store Traffic is a Gift?
Well, thanks for that, Wendy. I mean, physical retailers have been through such a tough time over these last 5 years. Let's go back to the pandemic. I mean, it fundamentally changed the way retailers had to retail. There were many casualties. Every retailer, mom and pops to the largest enterprise retailers, were all impacted. And not much of it was good. Beyond the pandemic, then we got into supply chain problems. Then we got into hyperinflation. And hey, for no additional charge, now retailers get to grapple with tariffs.
Oh, the T word. Everybody's talking about it.
Indeed. And so the simple fact is, even after doing this work and working with retailers for more than 22 years in what HeadCount has become today, retailers are still struggling. And many are not counting traffic in their stores. And so they don't know their traffic, they don't know their conversion rates. And this book is really a testament to really how valuable that store visit is to a physical retailer. And it's a gift. Store traffic is a gift. And what I hope to do with this book is to give retailers the ability to unwrap that gift.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something that you alluded to, and that is, retail has, I've been in retail as long as you have as well. And, we've been through this, I call it the evolution of retail, and I think, we went through 9/11. 9/11 was a tough time for retailers, and, people stopped traveling, and, it was just this, that I think that was the first time in my experience that we were really fighting for sales. And then, I fast forward to internet, and I joke with my son all the time about, he's 25, and I'm like, honey, I was alive before the internet. And he's like, really, Mom? How'd you get anywhere? How, like, I'm thinking, okay, Rand McNally, remember the maps that we put it? Yeah. Anyway, like, honey, we didn't have the internet. And, I think about retail before the internet, where people actually had to, if they needed something, they had to get dressed, they had to get in their car, they had to fight traffic, they had to pay for parking. They were on a mission, and they would go to a mall. And then here's the internet, where people didn't have to leave their house. They can shop naked. It shows up at their door. Like, it's this beautiful thing. And so that was a huge time that when Amazon really became a thing, you talk about Amazon and how today Amazon is actually a competitor. They're also a friend. So talk about that. How did Amazon affect retail, and how does it affect it today?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great setup, because Amazon has had a interesting relationship with physical retailers, both as an enemy. Let's be honest. I mean,
right.
When Amazon first came out in the 90s, they were public enemy number one, especially for bookstores, because that's where Amazon started. And, as it evolved, it became a case of physical retailers against Amazon. But here's the thing. Even through the pandemic, when people couldn't get out and shop, and you would think, oh, online is one of the only ways to buy product. And so that's going to decimate physical retailers. Here's a fun fact. To this day, more than 80% of transactions that retailers conduct are done in physical stores.
80%.
Even more than 80%. In some categories, it's 100%.
Really?
Exactly. Because and so you ask, well, why? I thought everyone moved to online. No, but here's the thing we should all keep in mind about online. Online and physical stores work together. Almost a large percentage of the transactions that get conducted in a physical store were first initiated from an online visit as consumers do their research and see who's got what and check inventory levels. Then they go to the store and buy.
Right.
And that's why these two things aren't either ors. Retailers that want to compete in this day and age have to have strong online presence, have great e-commerce sites, but they can never forget that a good number of their shoppers, the vast majority, in fact, are going to come to the store to actually make the purchase.
Oh, it's so true, Mark. I'm thinking about a client that I was working with in Canada, a jeweler, and we were mapping out their customer journey and, just going through the entire omni-channel. And I said, how many touch points do you think the customer actually goes to along their journey before they actually ever cross your lease line? And they were like, yeah, I don't know, probably 5 or 6. 18. 18. From social media to their website to phone calls to all of these different touch points. And so you think about retail today and before the internet, Mark, before omnichannel, before this whole customer journey, we didn't have what I call intender traffic. I mean, it used to be when I worked, especially with furniture stores and jewelry stores back in the day, customers would go to 5, 6, 7 stores to see what they had. Now, when they actually choose the 2 or 3 stores that they do, those are the stores that they've already narrowed down, they've done their research, and they intend to purchase. And that it's a quicker purchase. They're not going to a bunch of stores. So how does that affect traffic? How is that trend affecting, what you're seeing in the data of traffic?
Well, I think that's a great way to characterize exactly what's going on. I think that the consequence for physical retailers is that traffic visit is likely a sale. And you need to treat every one of those visits like they are a sale because they likely are. Those consumers that went to 5 or 6 or 7 furniture stores, they're still doing that. They're doing that online. But when they come into your store, they're likely there to buy, or there's a high probability for them to make a purchase. But if retailers don't track traffic, if they don't measure their conversion rates, that is understanding how many of those visits actually turn into a sale, then they have no idea of how many opportunities that they may be missing. And that's really the big aha in all this. I believe it's likely the biggest opportunity that physical retailers have, and that is making the most, converting that traffic that they get. But many retailers don't even know what they get. That's the shocking truth of it, even to this day.
Mark, why would a retailer not track traffic?
Well, you know what? You're asking the wrong guy because I've been an evangelist for this for, over 20 years. And so I never could understand it. In fact, I thought all retailers would want to do this. Whenever I visit a city, I like to do a mall audit. And so I'll pick one of the biggest malls or the most successful malls in the city, and I'll do a mall audit. I'll literally visit every store in the mall and assess whether they have a traffic counter or not. And here's what I can tell you and this is only in malls, and it's not a scientific study, it's just directionally where retailers are at. Traffic counter penetration is something around 50 to 55%. That means that almost half of the retailers in malls that and conduct your own mall audit if you wish, do not even have store traffic data. If you don't have store traffic data, you don't know what your opportunity is. And if you don't have traffic data, you can't calculate conversion rates. All you can do is what my boss did when I was a marketing manager, count the money in the till at the end of the day and say, it was good or it was bad or it was meh.
So, Mark, I want to go there because before we pressed record, we had a conversation about success metrics. And most companies, not just retailers, I think most companies look at revenue and they look at sales, and that's their number one primary success measurement. You look at things a little bit differently. And I think this is where a lot of retailers get it wrong. When we're looking at success factors, what's one of the number one mistakes that you see retailers make?
Well, you just hit right on it. They look at sales outcomes as the ultimate measure. Look, don't get me wrong. Every retailer solving for sales, that's the point. But sales are the outcomes. What I think needs to happen is that retailers need to break those sales down into their underlying drivers. Traffic times conversion rate, that is the percentage of visitors who bought, times average ticket equals sales. Sales are the outcomes. Traffic is the opportunity. And it's vital to understand it. If only 100 people came into your store, you couldn't sell to 101. But isn't it important to understand that there was 100? So you need to understand opportunity. You're solving for sales outcomes, and there's only two ways the store team can influence those sales outcomes. Conversion rate, they can sell to more of the people that came in, convert more of those visits into sales, and or increase average ticket size, which every retailer intuitively already understands that that's what they should be doing. But what they don't understand is those are the only two ways their store teams can actually generate the sales outcomes. And as I just said, about half of retailers don't even track traffic. So how do you improve conversion rates when you don't even know what they are?
I'm just speechless. Because I think about all the retailers over the years that I've worked with that are spending millions in marketing. And, exactly that. They look at sales and they say, we need more sales. So they go to their sales associates and they go, sell more. And the sales associates go, screw you. If I knew how to sell more, I would, right? It's like sell more does not help an associate sell more, right? I don't think people wake up in the morning wanting to suck. So if they're not selling, there's probably a reason for that. And so I just think that's so critical. So as you're working with these retailers, and you are, you're showing them what I call the magic formula of retail, which is exactly that: traffic times conversion times average sale, that equals sales. So when you're talking to retailers about the importance of conversion with retailers that don't have traffic counters, what's their response?
Yeah, well, it's still a harder sell than you would believe in this day and age. And that all said, if you look at the mall audits that I've done, the biggest and most successful brands, they're all counting traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. So that should tell you something. So when retailers don't count traffic, it is a bit of here's why it makes sense. Here's why it's important. But what I encourage retailers to do is do a small pilot. Let's collect traffic in a handful of your stores. Then when they see their own data, that's when the switch goes off. Because I'll tell you, there's two reactions that retailers, when they see their store traffic for the first time. Number one, they are shocked at how much traffic their stores get relative to their transaction counts, which is often only what head office can assess. How many transaction counts and how much in sales did we generate? So they're shocked by how much traffic. Secondly, they're shocked at how low their conversion rates are. Why aren't we converting 100%? Many retailers still believe we sell to everyone who comes into our store. If they were there to buy, we sold them. And here's another good one. Our stores are destinations. Oh, I love that one. That is arrogantly incorrect.
You would think that there would be a direct connection between sales and traffic, right? But you don't agree with that philosophy. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, the first chapter of the book is dedicated to that question. And it's the surprising connection between traffic, store traffic, and sales. If you asked any retailer, how do you make your sales go up? They will say, generally, get more traffic into the store. How do you do that? Well, we advertise or promote. So just get more traffic. Traffic equals sales. And they are related. Traffic is the opportunity. But I can tell you, after doing this for over 20 years, I have data to support this, and I share it in the book. Sales can actually go down even though traffic is up. Here's the real kicker, though. Traffic can be down, and okay, let me say that again. Traffic can be up and sales can be down, and traffic can be down and sales can be up.
So the inverse.
Yes. And how is that possible? Because the truth of the matter goes back to what I said a moment ago. There's only two ways your store team are going to produce sales outcomes. They can convert more or increase average sale values. The store can get very busy. If traffic goes up, remember that my story is the marketing manager. Our store got really busy. What happened? Lots of people were in looking to buy. I couldn't serve all those customers. So the opportunity was big. I could see that in the traffic data, but our conversion rates were low. You want to drive sales, you got to convert the traffic. Without converting that traffic, that traffic didn't do you any good. And so that's one of the big ahas retailers need to get their heads around. And you can even be more precise than that. And I would say, not only does more traffic not necessarily lead to greater sales, but I would say if you drive more traffic into stores that already do a poor job of converting the traffic they already get, you're going to have a double negative whammy. Not only will your sales likely not go up in those stores, but you're going to create even a crappier in-store experience that will cause shoppers to not visit your store next time.
Yeah. Well, and the ripple effect of that today with social media, you have one customer that walks into a store and doesn't have a great experience. The risk is they're immediately going to go on social media and everyone in the world hears about that. And all of a sudden, you're losing market share, your traffic is down, and it's very few customer experiences that causes that.
100%. Exactly. That's why I say that traffic is a precious, non-renewable resource. That's how retailers should think about it. Non-renewable in that even one service mistake or error could cause that customer to not come back. There's just too many other places to buy pretty much everything any retailer is trying to sell.
Yeah. So when you start to work with a customer that has not been traffic counting before, and then they start to traffic count, what are some of the insights that they start to see? Because it's more than just average basket and conversion. There's also labor related with this. Do they start to see that, we always say the right person in the right place at the right time, having the right people on the floor. Are there those kinds of insights as well? Like, what are the learnings when they actually start tracking?
Yeah, you just hit on the one that's at the very top of the list, and that's labor scheduling and how productive that store labor is. So first and foremost, once the retailer gets past the shock of seeing how much traffic their stores actually get and what their actual conversion rates are, the next question is, well, how do we improve conversion rates? And the very first thing that I advise every retailer to do is we start with their store labor. And please know, that doesn't mean put more labor into the store. Let's just understand how your labor is scheduled relative to the store visits, not sales, but relative to visits. Let's start by making sure that alignment is right. If your busiest hours of the day are between noon and 3 p.m., you may see that in your sales results, but you may not. Traffic could be up, conversion rates sag, and your sales might look fairly consistent throughout the day. So you say, hey, I'm scheduling relative to sales and I'm allocating, they match up pretty well. That's why you have to use traffic, not sales. And so that's at the very top of the list. And some of the misalignments in labor are just so obvious. When you put this data together, you just go, I can't believe this is just crazy what we just did in terms of labor. So it's never about more labor. It's how do you make the most of what you have? That all said, what you might discover is you just don't have enough labor. Or at times you have too much labor. That is, you have a lot of labor in the store, but your conversion rates aren't up. So then you have to say, okay, we have a we believe we have enough labor. Why are our conversion rates not going up? What is my labor doing? Tasking versus serving. And so once the store manager and the store team are aware of what the very unique traffic patterns are for their store, then, gosh, half the battle is just knowing where and when to look. And that's what this data does. And that's why they have to do this at the hourly level of granularity. Stores need to think about traffic and conversion at the hourly level for most retailers.
I'm thinking about working with clients that didn't have traffic counters, and what we would do is we would look at their allocation of hours and the percentage of hours, at 3-hour increments to sales. And I was always so frustrated because I'm like, but I don't know the sales that we're missing. And so is that one of the ahas that your customers or your clients start to have is, yeah, I'm looking at the sales that I have. I didn't even know to look for the 100 people that came in and we only sold 3.
Exactly. Wendy, exactly. Then that's what sets them on their own journey. Because once these ideas are inculcated amongst senior staff, that's when their own passion sort of takes over. But this can't just be a head office thing. I encountered the head of data science for a very large, successful chain of stores, and I asked her, "How does your senior executive team think about store traffic and conversion rates?" And she said, "You know what? We have traffic counters in they have more than 1,000 stores. We have traffic counters in all our stores, but you know what? It's just for the store team to look at. It's not really on the radar of the senior leadership team." And so when I hear that from a brand that is considered one of the biggest and most successful in their category, I just know, and couple that with my mall audits and knowing how many retailers don't have traffic data, I just see this as a profound opportunity that every retailer, every brick and mortar retailer, regardless of size, mom and pops to enterprise class retailers, can take advantage of. And this isn't rocket science. It's not data science. It's basic, fundamental, underlying sales drivers and having those metrics. I think it's like a utility. It's as important to running a store as electricity or internet access. Well, I think traffic and conversion insights should be right alongside of those things.
They're just as important as your POS because that drives whether or not you're putting money into your POS, right?
For the first 10 years of my company HeadCount, I would say to retailers, traffic counting should be as pervasive as POS. So you took my tagline away. I don't really say that anymore, but that's what I used to say. It should be as pervasive. If you have a POS system, you should have a traffic counter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, I know that your system is in over 20 countries. When you go and you're installing in your traffic counting systems into other countries, what differences do you see in retail from country to country?
This was really the most surprising insight as we moved beyond North America. And I'll give you the example of Central America. We ended up working with a major retailer based in El Salvador, of all places. I know that country's getting a lot of press lately. But nonetheless, they have about 1,000 stores. This is a sophisticated retailer. But I wondered if our metrics would still be interpreted and received at store level, because the ultimate truth is head office, they can understand this all they want, but unless your store teams understand traffic and conversion, they're the ones that actually move the conversion needle. They're the only ones that can do that. So unless there's line of sight from the executives all the way to the stores, then nothing's going to change. And I'll never forget when I gave my first presentation to a group of store managers in Central America. And I wasn't sure that they were really going to get these concepts. And I got to tell you, it's as simple. Anyone can get this. Traffic times conversion times average ticket equals sales. Everyone understands that.
Yep.
And so that's in part what explains how this, how we're in 20 countries. And in fact, retailers all over the world do this. And many have been doing this for a long time, but still many have not been doing this. The ideas apply.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing.
So you don't see a lot of differences from country to country.
We report substantially the same way. We changed the language. So reporting in Spanish or some other language, but the concepts are foundational and fundamental. So whether we're doing a retailer in Iceland to Australia to Ecuador, and we've worked with retailers in all those countries, it's the same fundamental ideas.
Yeah.
That's the simplicity and the beauty of this. That's been right underneath the noses of retailers forever, truly.
I think it's so interesting. I did a lot of work in Russia, and there was just a different urgency. I was working with a company called Ormatech, and they're a manufacturer of mattresses. And they had, 500 corporate stores, 500 stores that were part of their licensee agreement. And it was so interesting because they just were hungry and they were not complacent. And they just wanted to learn, and they wanted the newest, latest, greatest technology, and such a great organization with great leadership. And I came back to North America and just thought, our retailers have gotten complacent. And then the pandemic hit.
Right.
So, I know that in your book you talk, and you alluded to that a little bit earlier. What lessons have we learned from the pandemic from a retail perspective?
Yeah. You know what? I think the biggest lesson that we learned is just how precious store traffic is. And it's like so many other things. You don't oftentimes don't fully value something until you lose it.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, it was, I think, a week into the pandemic when things were just really terrible for everyone. And I'll never forget looking at the traffic and conversion report for a retailer that we work with that normally gets hundreds of thousands of visits a day go to zero. And I looked at this chart and I could not even believe my eyes. Just think of that, hundreds of thousands of visits a day to zero. And so the preciousness. So when retailers had to close, they sure cared about traffic. I got to tell you, the narrative around everybody cared about traffic during the pandemic. But here's the thing. We get past the pandemic, keep moving on, and then retailers become complacent. Okay, well, let's just carry on and do what we've been doing. And I just don't think any retailer that wants to be successful in this day and age can just keep doing what they're doing and not making data-informed decisions. You hear that all the time. Now, the other problem retailers have is they have too much damn data. There's so much of it that I say, start with the basic foundational data, and store traffic is as foundational as it comes. It contextualizes everything else that goes on in the store. And so traffic and conversion rates, every retailer must do this. And if not, continue to keep guessing. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so true, Mark. I think about one of the things that is in your bio is that you're really a thought leader in retail analytics. So, as you continue to influence this industry in, practices and discussions, what are you hoping that happens in the industry as a result? Obviously, people are tracking traffic, but is it the urgency? Is it because I think you're right. We have so much data. And we were having a discussion about the National Retail Federation, NRF, that you went to this year, and everybody's talking about omni-channel and data, and customer experience. And yet customer experience, they're talking about omni-channel, they're not talking about in-store. So, what are you hoping with your thought leadership will happen in the industry as a result of the information you're bringing forth?
Wendy, I got retailing in my blood. It was the first career I had. I worked in retail stores, department stores, specialty stores, computer store, as I told the story. I want retailers to thrive, survive, and flourish. I'm a retailer at heart, and I know how the profound impact these basic metrics had on me as a retailer, and how it has had a profound impact on the retailers we work with. Look, I offer our store traffic and conversion analytics as a monthly service. I've had retailers on our service for 18 years. Think about that.
Yeah.
It becomes ingrained and woven into the fabric of how they operate their businesses. And that's really what I get most satisfaction about. Not that they necessarily come to me. You know what? Honestly, I don't care how retailers collect this data. Just do it. Damn it. Just do it.
Absolutely.
But the fact that they stay and it becomes ingrained and they make better decisions, it doesn't guarantee success. It's like ask a weather forecaster if radar is important. Yeah, it's important. It doesn't mean that tornado still won't hit and make a mess of things. But was it important to have that information so that you could have made different decisions? I think the same is analogous with retailers and what traffic and conversion data is to them.
Yeah. So you believe that the future is bright for retail. Dig into that.
Well, I mean, if the pandemic and look, there were retail casualties as a result of the pandemic, without a doubt. Businesses were disrupted. Many brands went out of business completely, and others struggled mightily with profitability. The president of a large chain that we work with, that was one of the retailers that, going back to the pandemic days, was deemed to be essential. So they got to stay open. You would think that was an advantage. This president said to me, well, Mark, a couple of things. Number one, I have to restrict how many people come into my store. So that's problem number one. But number two, and this retailer sold all kinds of things from general merchandise to electronics and all kinds of things. This president said to me, you know what, Mark, I got to sell a lot of toilet paper to make up for the sale of one television. And so, the point was, it was tough on everybody. And look, I think that retail has always been a challenging business, low margin, high turnover of staff. Yeah. Retailers need to take every advantage they can, and that is having data to make decisions with. And that's why, this information is never be unimportant, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, and retailers are so resilient.
They're so resilient.
Find a way, right? And so I think, with this increase of data, how would you advise a retailer to make sure that they're looking at the right things, quality over quantity?
Yeah, absolutely. I stumbled upon a book called The Tyranny of Metrics. And I think that that's an interesting book and an interesting idea. I think that, in the mid 2011, when I wrote my second book, Conversion, the Last Great Retail Metric, at that time, retailers were talking big data. Everything was big data. Well, they started to collect so much data, and a new form of data started to roll in, and that was social media posts and all the data that brought. And then the reality is retailers struggled, and many do to this day, to try to extract insight from that data.
Right.
And so I say, look, retailers, prioritize. Start with foundational stuff that really connect right to your business outcomes, traffic, conversion, average ticket, and sales. Then layer on other data sets on top of that. Traffic contextualizes everything that goes on in the store. Now, some retailers will say, yeah, but not every visit is convertible. They may be coming in to pick up an order because they bought online and picked up in store. It was a BOPUS order. Great. Then we should understand how many BOPUS orders you're doing relative to traffic.
That's right.
Everything is relative to traffic. If you have one store that processes 100 BOPUS orders in a day and another store that processes, two stores that process 100 transactions, BOPUS orders in a day, one store gets 1,000 traffic visits, the other store gets 200 visits. That means in the second store, half their traffic was processing BOPUS orders. In the other store, it's only 10%. Knowing that can arm the retailer with organizing staff resources accordingly to support that.
And if you don't have that information, you're just flying blind, right?
You're flying blind. You are literally flying blind.
So good. Well, Mark, we are so excited for your third book to come out. When does it come out? Store Traffic is a Gift?
It will be on store shelves and available everywhere books are sold September 30th of 2025.
Well, we are so excited, and we will make sure that all of that information is in the show notes. And, before we close, I always like to leave an action item for our listeners. So, other than just go out and freaking count your traffic, what other advice would you give to retailers from all of your years in retail with where we are in the world today?
Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon, did a interview with Harvard Business Review back in 2007, and he was asked, "What do you see changing in the next 10 years?" And you know what his reply? This is how I'll leave this. His reply was this: "People often ask what's going to happen in the future," and he says, "I can guess at it. But the more important question is what's not going to change in the next 5 or 10 years." And this is what I would say to retailers. Despite AI and data and the changing world and tariffs and pandemics, what will not change is that people are going to come and visit your physical stores, and they're there to buy. And so your store traffic and the requirement to understand those visits will not change in a sea of change. And that's the advantage if the retailer knows what to do with that information.
Such wise wisdom. Mark, it's always so fun to have you on the show. I so appreciate your time, and we wish you really good luck with your book. Really excited to read it. And so thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for shining a light on this important topic.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Unleash with Wendy Swanson. Make sure to subscribe and follow to be notified when the newest episodes of the podcast go live. Please take a moment to rate and review us. It helps others discover Unleashed and join our movement of forward-thinking leaders. You can find contact information and important links in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, keep leading with authenticity, embrace change, and choose to live life unleashed.